All right, good morning. As you are answering these questions, you're probably going to need to hit pause quite often. Um, you might even need to rewind every once in a while to make sure that you answer them correctly. So the first one that we're going to do is we're going to be graphing y equals 2 cosecant theta. First thing I want to do is ask myself, what is its reciprocal function? Because that's what I want to graph. And that is y equals 2, and the reciprocal of cosecant is sine. And remember, theta and x, they're just both variables, so it doesn't really matter which one we use. In this case, my amplitude is 2. My b is 1. That means that there is one cycle from 0 to 2 pi. And my period, I'm just going to use p for that, is 2 pi over b, which would be 2 pi over 1, or 2 pi. So let's go start by putting our hash marks. My amplitude is 2. So it means I'm going to go up 2 and down 2. I'm going from 0 to 2 pi, and there's only one cycle, so I'm going to divide that into fourths. All right, and sine is going to go 0 max, 0 min, 0. And I want to do that one really lightly because it's really not part of the graph. It's just there to kind of help us. So 0 max, 0 min, 0. All right, not super well drawn, but you can get the idea. Now, once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and draw in my asymptotes. The asymptotes occur where there is a 0. Well, why is there an asymptote there? The reciprocal of 0 is undefined. So I'm going to have an asymptote there. Oops, we're going to need to move that one over just a tad. And one right there. And once you've got those asymptotes drawn, you've actually done the tough work. You're going to use those asymptotes to help guide you. It's a reciprocal. So on the sine, I have a max. That means on the cosecant, I would have a minimum. So it's going to look like that. And right there. And that is what my graph should look like. All right, on the next one, we're going to be graphing 2 secant x. Again, first thing you want to ask yourself, what is the reciprocal function? In this case, it's y equals cosine x. Ask yourself, what is my a, b, and period? Well, my amplitude is 2. My b is 1, and my period is going to be 2 pi. So let's go ahead and get those hash marks. Go up 2, go down 2. From 0 to 2 pi. Remember on those hash marks, whatever your period is, you're dividing that into fourths. So 1/4 times your period, 1/2 times your period, 3/4 times your period. And this time, it's going to go max, 0, min, 0, max. And I'm just going to go kind of a light meaning it would be going from there on. Let's go ahead and get our asymptotes. Our asymptotes are occurring where there's zeros. So I'm having one there and one there. Now you've done the tough part. We go ahead and draw. Right there's a maximum for the cosine. That'll be the minimum for the secant. And again, you can get really close to those asymptotes. Just don't touch it. All right, the next one, we have a negative. Well, what that's really going to do is just flip it over the x-axis. Ask yourself what the reciprocal function is. Well, for cosecant, it is sine. So we're going to graph y equals sine 2x. My a is 1, b is 2. So that means my period is 2 pi over 2, which is just pi. We're going to be graphing 2 cycles because we're doing it from 0 to 2 pi. So, oops, let's do that in black. Still going to be going out to 2 pi, but my period is pi. So I'm going to have one cycle here, one cycle there. I'm going to divide those up into force. Divide that up into force as well. I think we can do a little better on that. There. My amplitude is just 1, -1. That would be pi over 2. That'd be pi over 4. 3 pi over 4. I'm not going to do all of them. That'd be 3 pi over 2. But if you wanted to, that would be 5 pi over 4, 7 pi over 4. All right, so let's go ahead. Yeah, let's go ahead and write that down. Pi over 4. And that negative means that this time, starting at a minimum. So 0, or minimum, 0, maximum, 0, minimum. So there's my first cycle. And then I just do the same pattern again. Minimum, 0, maximum, 0, minimum. Go ahead and draw in our asymptotes. And that's where there's crossing the x-axis where I have my x-intercepts or my zeros. Move that one over just a tad. Oops. Now once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and draw the function. I'm going to have a minimum there. Becomes a maximum. And that's what your graph should look like. Again, the graph doesn't include that black part of the sign. That's just there to kind of guide you. Let's do one that is negative with the secant. So ask yourself, what is the reciprocal for secant? It is cosine. So we're going to graph negative cosine x. My a is 1. B is 1. Period. It's 2 pi. So 1 period will get us to the 2 pi. Divide that up into force. So I'm not sure what exactly happened to that pi there, but we'll let it go. When I do that, I'm going to start at the minimum. That should have been more, make that just a bigger dot to show that it goes through there. Put in your asymptotes. You're going to have to move that one over. Once you have your asymptotes, so that'll help sketch it. And visually, you should be able to see the difference between having one cycle and two cycles. This one only had one. I'm going to redo that middle part. Did not do a very good job there. I'm not really sure that that's any better, but you get the idea. All right. So on this one, you're going to be asking yourself, what is the reciprocal function? Cosecant, that's a sine. My A is 1. B is 3. So that means my period is 2 pi over 3. On this one, the hash marks could be a little bit trickier. We're going from 1 to -1. So that's my range for the sine. And one thing that I have found that's kind of easy on this one is I know I'm going from 0 to 2 pi. And there's going to be 3 cycles. Let's divide that up into thirds. So I'll have a cycle here, a cycle there, and a cycle there. And my period is 2 pi over 3. If you add another one, that would be 4 pi over 3. And that is technically 6 pi over 3, which reduces down to 2 pi. And then take each one of your cycles and divide that up into fourths. I'm not going to put every single hash mark in here because it would get too busy, but you would just take 1/4 times 2 pi over 3, 1/2 times 2 pi over 3, 3/4 times 2 pi over 3, 1 times 2 pi over 3. And then you could continue that on. So let's see. Let's do this one in a dotted, and I'm going to go ahead and do that in gray. It is sine, so you start at 0, max 0, min 0. So my first cycle should look like that. And I give myself a C on drawing there. I'm going to repeat that 2 more times. Max 0, min 0, max 0, min 0. Okay, again, I don't think it's the best drawn, but it gives you the idea. Once you have that, you can draw in your asymptotes. You have your asymptotes wherever it's crossing the x-axis. And if I were better at this, these would be more evenly spaced. I don't think they're horrible, but they're not great. And you can tell, since there's more cycles going on, there's more asymptotes. Now that we've got that, we're going to go ahead and sketch our actual cosecant graph. There's our first one. And then again, use those asymptotes to help guide you. You don't ever want to cross an asymptote. All right, there we go. Enjoy.